Hello again, everybody. This is episode 68 at Streets and Eats. And today on the podcast, we are taking you to the Mediterranean. That's right, a set of islands in the Med that's known as the Balearic Islands. Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure.
Who knows where those are? Raise your hand.
Right.
I can't say I did before I went there. I had heard of Mallorca, but I didn't know that it was a set of islands. Did you know that?
No, I thought it was like a place, a city or something.
Well, speaking of Mallorca, I know where you can see a real dragon that was slayed in Mallorca.
Oh, really? Is there a St. John's Cathedral there or something? I know there's a big cathedral there, but...
Is St. John the Dragon Slayer?
Oh, yeah. No, well, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. It's St. George that's the Dragon Slayer.
Well, this guy's name was Bartolomeo.
Oh, so not St. George.
No, it's not even really a dragon. What do you think it could be?
It's got to be a lizard, like a monitor or a snake, maybe.
You're close. You're close.
It could be a sea lion.
It's ancient.
An alligator, a crocodile.
It is a crocodile. So according to legend, centuries ago, there was a dragon in Mallorca that terrorized the whole island as it lived furtively underground in the sewers. In the sewers. I mean, come on, that tells you it's a crocodile right there. It was hunted by the knight who was named, as I said, Bartolomeo. And once he killed it in true chivalrous fashion, he offered it to his sweetheart. I don't know if they ate it or not.
Did she make leather boots out of it or alligator skin boots out of it?
I don't know, but what they did do is they mummified it, and now it rests in a display case in the Diocesan Museum of De Palma.
Well, we missed that.
I know. I mean, that's a reason to go back if nothing else, right?
The things you find when you start researching.
On top of the fact that we had a fabulous time and the food is amazing and the weather's great. And I liked it.
Yeah,
period.
Of course. Well, I remember, and I don't know the time frame on this. I don't know what decades this was, but maybe you do. But there was always this big hubbub about alligators or crocodiles in the sewers in New York City.
Oh, yeah.
That got there from people flushing down baby pets down the sewage and stuff, and they grew up down there.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was ever any truth to it, but that was a big urban myth for the longest time. I say urban myth, but maybe it is true. If anybody out there knows about the alligators or crocodiles, whatever they were, in the sewers of New York City, chime in. I would love to know more about it, but you don't hear about that anymore, so I'm guessing urban myth.
Well, maybe they caught them all. I don't know. Plus, I mean, it's not their habitat. Can they really live in New York City?
Yeah, right. Well, there's plenty of food, I'm sure, getting thrown out and washed into the sewers every day. And rats. Lots of rats to eat. I keep seeing rats.
I know. We live in Vietnam. Please, and you don't have to point it out to me. I mean, it's bad enough.
I try not to point it out every time I see them. But
you know what? Where do you remember seeing the biggest rats of your life?
France,
you saw, there was a big one in France, but that's not where I've seen the biggest one. The biggest rat I ever saw. This could be a whole podcast. Where are the weirdest things? The biggest rat I ever saw, I was sleeping in a hotel room in Sardinia.
You were sleeping in the hotel room, or it was sleeping in the hotel room?
I was sleeping in a hotel room in Sardinia. And I stretched and I opened my eyes and the sun was coming in. And I was right near the balcony. I looked out the balcony and standing on the banister of my balcony was the biggest damn rat I have ever seen. You know, in the cartoons, when the person gets scared out of bed and they actually go horizontally,
like levitate out of bed.
They levitate up. I swear to you, that's what I did.
And then start running with your feet moving, but not touching the ground.
Oh my gosh. It scared the you-know-what out of me. And I mean, I didn't open the back balcony door. I didn't look for this rat, but never saw it again. Thank God. I only saw it once, but it got my blood pumping.
I bet. No, I was thinking of France and Marseille.
Avignon. You're thinking of Avignon.
Was it Marseille or Avignon?
Avignon.
Yeah, we were out late into the evening having a good time in the old town, and there was not much else out besides other fellow revelers.
Well, there was hardly anybody. It was like a dead town.
Yeah.
And I think it was it a weeknight?
Yeah, probably.
And it wasn't in the summer. It was in the spring. And there was you and me and five
few
guys?
of our friends. Yeah.
5 other guys. I was the only woman. And as we're walking down the streets, the fear I had on that was that we weren't married then, by the way.
No, that was before we were married. So this is definitely dating it, since people know we've been married for a long time.
This is a long time ago. We're walking down the cobblestone streets and I see red lights. And I turned to all those guys and I said, "You better not leave me in the streets alone."
And
that's
so,
all I said.
As we walked through, one by one, we were peeling off and separating away. I'm just kidding.
Not.
We were not that
Everybody
kind of people.
stayed together. The group of people we were in probably wouldn't partake in that type of entertainment anyway.
But we like to say we were chasing the hookers and chasing the rats, because we were having fun with the rats, but they were huge.
Yeah, but that's because we were young and stupid.
Okay, well,
but
this is the region.
It is kind of the region. I mean,
yeah,
but
it is the region we're talking about.
We're getting off task here.
We are going to be talking about the Balearic Islands and where they are and what they are and what to do there and all the fun that we had when we went there. I never saw any rats, and I never saw any alligators or crocodiles or whatever it was.
I never saw anything egregious at all. I just saw beautiful flowers. We went in the springtime. We went during spring break. And it was, we went to 3 of the 4 major islands, which are...
Okay, so the 3 islands of the Balearic, I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right.
Balearic
Islands are Mallorca. That's the main island. It's pretty big.
It's a good size.
Good size. It's definitely where the main airport is to fly into. You can fly into other islands too, but that's like the big international airport. It has the most flights. And then Ibiza is the second most popular. I don't know about... It might be the second biggest.
I think it may be. I don't know. I wonder which one is more popular, actually.
Oh,
Ibiza is pretty popular.
Yes, with Europeans especially coming in. I think Mallorca, with international, it definitely has more flights in and out and more destinations that you can come from to Mallorca. But Ibiza has quite a few too.
Well, and I think that a lot of people that go to Ibiza are rich and famous. So
they have
their own ways of getting there.
So between the two of them, this is really kind of like the Riviera of the Med, except you're on islands and you're not on the Riviera. And the Riviera is on the Med, but it's kind of like a jet setting destination, which we had never really heard of. Oh, but the third island, we should probably say that, is Menorca.
Well, there's another 4th island too that's pretty popular. It's Formentera, but we didn't get there.
Oh, yeah.
Because we only had a week.
And there's also just a lot of like smaller islands around. So, but really the 3 big ones, Mallorca, Ibiza, and Menorca, and then the 4th one, which is small, but it's also a destination.
And what we did is we flew in we just flew in. We came from Germany and we met friends there from Spain, from other parts of Spain. And we rented a huge van because there was quite a few of us. And we basically did like a road trip around 3 of the islands.
Yeah.
We started on Mallorca because we all flew in there. And then we only took a day trip to Ibiza because we went on the ferry and we couldn't take the car. And we didn't spend an overnight there. And then we did a couple of nights in Menorca. So we did Mallorca, Ibiza, and Menorca. And it was a fabulous way to do it. I think if I do go back, I would probably spend more time in different places, because I think some places we sort of ran through. Like Palma, for example. We did spend a little time in Palma, but maybe not enough.
Right. We didn't stay there. We stayed further inland.
Yeah.
In Orinca.
Thinking that it was one of those capital cities that we're not overly fond of, but as it turns out, it's a small city and it's beautiful.
It's got a lot of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I do it a little differently, but then that's the ideal of when you go back to some place, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you've got enough more information in your memory banks that you can say, well, I really like I might spend more time on Menorca. We really, really enjoyed Menorca.
Yeah, I enjoyed Menorca a lot.
I don't know how much more time I would spend on Ibiza. It's not really my scene, but we didn't get out of the main part of Ibiza. So maybe in that case I would. It's hard to say. Hard to say.
Well, I can remember I didn't really know anything about the Balearic Islands until we moved to Germany. And I mean, we were both pretty young when we moved to Germany. So in that sense, yeah, we've known about them for a long time, but it's not a destination you really hear a lot about.
As Americans, I think it depends.
North American travelers.
I think it depends on your nationality because I believe, well, even when we were there were plenty of Brits there.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a British destination because it's sun, sand.
Yeah, it's kind of like a spring break destination for a lot of people. We went during spring break too, but we're talking like partiers and things like that type of spring break where like in the US, they'd all go to Florida or Mexico or someplace like that. It's that type of place as well. And yeah, if you're American, you're coming to Europe and you're going to go to Spain. There's a lot to do in Spain without going out to Mallorca and Ibiza.
Spain. Yeah.
So it would be pretty low on your list if it even made your list or even got on your radar.
Yeah, I agree.
For living in Europe, when you're doing a lot of travel, Europeans typically, a lot of times, will pick or have a destination where they go back to
time and time
over again.
Kind of like regular. That's very much the same in the States too. Like
that's true.
I didn't grow up there, but where my grandmother lived in Connecticut, that whole East Coast, they would have like cabins on lakes and stuff, and that would be their cabin, and they would go up there all the time. That's what they did on their vacation
time, right?
Yeah, and that harkens back. I mean,
that's true. In the same way in California where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Everybody had not everybody, but a lot of people had places on a lake that they loved to go to, and that's where they would go all the time. We usually went different places. We always tried to go somewhere new. And maybe that's what developed the explorer in me, always going somewhere new.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. So anyway, that's when I first heard about it. Never really gave it much thought of a traveling destination because it was more of a reputation for being the party destination for spring break type stuff. And that does not really call to me.
Well, I remember when we lived in Germany the first time, because we've lived in Germany a total of 3 times now, and maybe more coming up.
Maybe.
Hint. But anyway, we've lived for multiple years each time in Germany, quite a few times. And the very first time we were there, when we met and we married and we had children, there was a song on the radio. I could not tell you what year that song was, but I would guess 84 or 85.
Later. It was in the 90s.
Was it in the 90s?
Yeah, I think it was the second time we were back there.
Oh, maybe it was the second time.
In fact, I'm sure it was because I know the song you're thinking of. And I can remember before I came to live with you guys, because I was still in the Air Force at the time.
What do you mean when you came to live with us,
you
guys?
You and Erica were always singing this song in Holland. Is it the...
No.
We're going to eat pizza?
Yeah, but it
was a song
I thought I learned it from RTL Plus.
No, it was a song from the Venga Boys. It came out in 1998.
Oh, you say
I did a little research on that one.
Oh. Anyway, I don't know. Has anyone heard this song? I'm going to, and this is what I thought the lines were. I'm going to eat pizza. Oh. That's how I sang it. I'm going to eat pizza. Every time we were going to order pizza, we were like, we're going to eat pizza. Oh. But then we saw the actual video and we're like, Ibiza? Where's that?
And it's like partying at the beach.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we always thought of the Balearic Islands for spring break. A big party town, party area. But yeah, we're going to Ibiza. It was one of the big songs from the Venga Boys, who are a Dutch band, by the way. So
maybe that's why we were
living in Holland at the time.
Yeah, we were living in Holland.
Actually, not Germany.
And this is before this. I mean, the internet was around, but it was before streaming TV and that kind of stuff. So we basically had to look for anything we could find that was interesting on TV. I did get some BBC because living in the Netherlands.
Sky, I think.
Sky. Yeah, and we got some English channels.
But until I read my favorite series.
Oh, yeah. And what is that, Jim?
Patrick O'Brien's Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin series.
If you love...
I would have never wanted to even think about going to Mallorca or Menorca or Ibiza. But it figures prominently in the very first book, Master and Commander, which is not what the movie was based on, unfortunately. It would have been a much better movie if it was. But that it was their base of operations for the British during the late
1800s.
During the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Oh, okay. I was a century off.
And so the little town there, the port town on Menorca, figures prominently in that. And after reading that, I thought, ooh, I want to go there. It sounds like a really cool place. Turns out it was.
It really was. And actually, that was one of our favorite places.
So, okay, what's the best time to go?
Well, we've already kind of answered that over and over again.
If you're a partier, spring break.
But you don't have to go at spring break. I think we went in spring.
Yes.
And we're not partiers.
No.
And like I said, I mean, the spring is going to be the greenest time of year. The rest of the year, it's going to be brown. There were flowers everywhere. I mean, just fields and fields of them. And there are lots of sheep and donkeys and, all kinds of things. And to see those beautiful domestic animals amongst the flowers, I mean, you just can't get more picturesque than that.
Yeah, well,
it was gorgeous.
The new green and the grass. Usually it's a pretty dry area. It's pretty arid. So that's a good time to get some color.
Now, we aren't swimmers. And when we went in spring, we did actually wear, I have pictures of us with jackets on quite a bit. So it wasn't cold, but it got chilly in the evening. And probably the water wasn't really warm enough to go swimming unless you're drunk. Then you probably wouldn't notice. But I would say spring is probably the best time to go. Although, I mean, it's just one of those places that has good weather all year long.
Yeah.
I don't think there's necessarily a bad time to go. I think just like with anything that can be a tourist destination, what you really have to worry about is when things are open and when things close down. And when you get too off season, unfortunately, then you have a harder time finding places to stay and that kind of stuff. I think you can always find restaurants though.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too.
I think it just limits, like maybe you can't go as far out and stay in some of the littler places because those might only be open in the summer.
There may not be places to stay in the smaller areas and the restaurants, like you said.
But that also might be different nowadays with Airbnb and VRBOs and all that kind of stuff, which is something that we love.
Yeah.
We love to do the self-catering thing, mainly because there's always, we travel just the two of us, but we also travel with others quite often as well.
So it's also one of the main areas in Europe where nut trees can be found. Almonds are grown on the islands. So earlier in the spring, like late winter, they're starting to flower and that can be really pretty. So those flowers come out too. I think the high season is summer because people think of it as a beach destination. And it is a beach destination. There is. Yeah. All along the east coast of Mallorca is where you're going to find just long strands of beaches with the resorts all the way down, and everybody's got their own section of the beach set up with umbrellas and beach chairs, and it I'm sure can get really hopping in the summertime. And I think it can get pretty pricey at that time too. That's right. It's going to go up. But it is also a big package destination. So if that's the time you're going, you can really, I think, find some good package deals. That's a good thing to look for. And especially, you know how you go into the airport and they have the package deals that are last minute things. So you can not plan it at all or just go into the airport and say, where can I go that's beachy? Oh, look, Mallorca's got a sale on for 127 euros for 4 nights and the airfare. Yeah, I'm curious. We have not been back to Europe since COVID. So I'm hoping that that's not something that COVID killed off. I hope not too. The whole last minute thing where you could just, like you said, pop it, rock on into the airport and up to either a travel agent or even some of the ticket sales for the airlines themselves would have these amazing deals that if you were willing to just get in a plane, you could go.
They were normally for more, I don't know. They just never appealed to me.
No.
We've looked and looked and looked.
There are
and
those
never
package deals, and it's not really us. We don't want to go to a resort and stay there for a week.
Yeah, that's just not us.
Other things about the time of year. I mean, it's beautiful islands in the middle of the Mediterranean. Kind of the north part of the Mediterranean. It's in between like Barcelona in Spain and Corsica. So it's not too far from the French Riviera and the Spanish Costa del Sol or Costa Brava.
Well, Costa Brava is south of...
Further south. Okay, so I was right. Costa del Sol. And like I said, Corsica, which is also another beautiful island to go to. And Sardinia, same kind of region. So really beautiful weather, I think, all year long. You do get some periods where you're going to get some heavy rain and high winds like throughout the winter time. But even that's going to clear up if you happen to be going during that time.
Yeah, if we go back, maybe we'll go in like January, February time.
Yeah, I love going places off season and during winter because winter for us, I mean, we lived in Alaska. When we think of winter, that's what I think of. And I just love winter weather when it's not minus 40. Well, 30 to 50 Fahrenheit.
I think that's a whole nother podcast. We should do like the best winter destinations.
Oh, I like that.
To get to winter.
We can do our top 5 winter destinations.
Yeah, and let's keep that in mind. Don't let us forget, folks.
So how do you get there?
Okay, well, we got there by plane. And Mallorca, I mean, it's a party destination. It is a European beach destination place. People go there all the time. So Ryanair and all
EasyJet, fueling.
all those budget airlines fly into Mallorca, and it's really, really pretty inexpensive. I don't remember how much we paid, but it was cheap.
You can definitely get some cheap flights, and it doesn't take long to get there from anywhere in Europe.
You can also take a ferry all the way out of Barcelona. It's the same ferry we got on, right? Because it goes to all the things.
No, it's a different system.
Is it a different system?
Yeah, I thought it was too, but in the research I found different.
At any rate, you can take a ferry all the way to Barcelona. And we didn't do that because we only had 10 days and we had as it was, we never even got to Formentera. We would have used, it would have just eaten into our time. We don't like that. So fly and drive is always a good option for us. But we did take the ferry from Mallorca to Ibiza for a day and back, which you can do for a day trip. And then we also took the ferry from Mallorca with our car to Menorca because we were there for a few days.
Yeah, and the ferry comes into the north end of Menorca, Ciudadela, and then if you want to go anywhere else, you can take a bus, but it's going to be slow and it's going to spend a lot of your time.
Well, if you really have time, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Because we did stop and take photos. Like I said, I don't know how many times I made Jim pull over for those donkeys in the flower fields, but let me tell you, they're gorgeous. So.
I stopped counting photo stops decades ago.
But anyway, yeah. There are things to stop and see, and renting a car is not a bad idea. You probably can rent scooters or Vespas or something as well. Mm-hmm. And it's a good place to do that. We tended to not do that as much simply because we like to talk so much in the car and we're always planning and plotting and analyzing and writing stories in our heads and doing whatever. So for us, riding a scooter isn't ideal because we don't get that extra downtime. But now that we're in Vietnam, we also have to switch that up a little bit because that's the major mode of transportation.
It's the easiest way to get around. Cars are not a good way to get around. And they're just sitting in the back. And that
but
works.
we do that too. Okay. So yeah, you can go by plane and ferry, or just ferry and do it that way.
And you can also fly into Ibiza. Like I said, there's not as many flights from Europe into Ibiza, but there are still quite a few. And Ryanair has destinations all around Europe flying into Ibiza or Mallorca. We're not sponsored by Ryanair, but Ryanair, if you're listening,
I'd like to be.
We could be. If you have never flown on one of those cheap airlines, that's a different experience. Maybe that could be a good podcast too.
What's that?
Flying cheap airlines and what it's like and what to expect. Given the state of most airlines these days, where they've really stripped back on amenities and comfort, there's not a lot of difference anymore, I don't think.
I would agree with that. I would
Once
definitely
you're
agree with that.
there, like you said, we rented a car and it was pretty affordable. It's very easy to drive around Mallorca and Menorca. Once we got into Port Mahon on Menorca, the driving became extremely difficult because it's a very old town and there's a lot of areas you can't drive in. There was a lot of one-way streets. Our maps wasn't up to date with the one-way streets. So I don't know if you remember this, but trying to get to the hotel that we were staying in Port Mahon proved to be impossible. I ended up like parking and kicking everybody out a block or two away after having driven around for probably 20 minutes without ever being able to get to the road in front of the hotel. And then I found a place to park, which was a little bit further away. And then mostly it's a walking town, so you're not going to drive there. But driving to the towns and in the bigger cities, super easy, really easy. We did not drive on Ibiza, so I don't know what that would be like.
Yeah.
We only took a bus around Ibiza to get from the port to the city and then back to the port.
Yeah.
Because the ferry dumps you like on the opposite side of the harbor. And there's a water ferry that you can go across, which I think would be really cool. I love a little water ferry like that. But we were just there for the day and we didn't have a lot of time. So,
and I remember the line was
and
really
the line
long.
was long. And so we opted for the bus. And there is a great bus system on both islands, all three islands, I guess. You can definitely get to in between the cities, no problem, and into some of the smaller areas. But you can't get everywhere. And for some of the things we wanted to do, a car was definitely a necessity.
And it doesn't take much for us to rent a car anyway.
Well, speaking of those things we wanted to do, we flew into Mallorca. We met up with our friends there. We had the rental car. It was a good size. I think there was 6 of us.
Yeah, they had 2 children at the time.
Yeah.
Now they have 3. That sounded bad the way I said it. No, they just didn't have all their children yet.
Yeah.
So we traveled with another couple and their toddlers because I love traveling with toddlers.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we were in a slightly larger vehicle than we would normally be, but it still was not difficult to get around.
I mean, I don't remember having problems finding parking either.
Parking was never a big issue.
Even in the cities. I mean, we would park on the side of the road. We didn't worry about the car. Things were safe. But again, we were not really in the party area. I think there you might have to have be a little bit more vigilant about your safety and
more
about,
secure parking lot.
That's where when people are getting drunk, that's when you're going to get pickpocketed. That's when, if anything untoward is going to happen, that's when it's going to happen.
When they've been drinking. I agree. So Mallorca, like you said, we didn't spend a lot of time in Palma.
Because we had a goal.
Yeah, right. We knew what we were doing and we did go into Palma. We parked the car and we got out and we walked around the old town, which was beautiful. There's a 13th century cathedral, which as gothic gorgeous. As you can imagine.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It was Easter services. It wasn't Easter Day, but there were Easter services going on. And there's crowds and crowds of people all around the cathedral.
So we were thinking, and we'll go pop into the cathedral and do our look around, take photos, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And we were sort of thwarted. I mean, as it turned out, we weren't really completely thwarted because we did go later after we found out what the hoopla was all about. And here is one of those times when we ran into... Well, we didn't run into them, but...
Well, us and about
600 people
of our closest friends.
Yeah. Anyway, the King of Spain was going to services there.
With his family,
With his family. And we were close to them, where we ended up being, just because we didn't exit the cathedral with everybody else who was going to Mass, because we were going in. That was our plan. We were going to go in. So we were in an alcove that just happened to be
like on the side,
kind of where they brought up his car for his family to get in. So we were only, I would say 30 feet from him.
Yeah.
But that was pretty cool. And then after that, everybody, of course, dispersed because they'd already gone to Mass and we had the cathedral to ourselves. So it was pretty cool all the way around.
And of course, there's a Moorish fortress like right next to it. That's now the palace. And the grounds there are beautiful with fountains and greenery. Great place to walk around.
That was also the day we went to, I think it's Balearic Castle. It's a round castle. So we were, and that's one of the reasons we didn't spend as much time in Palma Palma, like downtown Palma, because we had all these plans.
Yeah.
So we were going to the castle, and we love castles. And like I said, we were with a couple of toddlers, so we figured that was a better thing to do. And that was a cool castle. It was all round. It's one of the few round castles in the world.
Well, one of the main reasons that we were on Mallorca was a UNESCO World Heritage and Culture Site, or region, I guess, which was the Serra de Tramuntana.
It's a national park too.
It's a national park and a UNESCO region where it's the whole kind of northwestern face of the island is this mountain range. And the villages that have been populating the areas in the mountains and just everything that's been going on there, religion, the roads themselves, the way they were built, it's just an incredible place to explore.
They have a lot of terracing for their fields because it's mountainous. So it was pretty cool. I mean, it's not like terrace like you see in like Bali or
right
or Vietnam, but it is still terraced and interesting farming going on there as well.
So there we stayed in, I think, one of the coolest places we've stayed in, the Sanctuary de Luc. I guess the Sanctuary of St. Luke.
Yeah, which basically it was a monastery.
A monastery where they've opened up rooms for tourists to come and stay in, pilgrims to come and stay in. It's a big pilgrimage area on the island. And it's a great base of operations for exploring the Serra de Tramuntana.
As it turns out, we've stayed in a few monasteries in Spain. And if you haven't done that and you're going to Spain, put that on your list because we haven't had a bad experience yet. They've all been just amazing.
Yeah. And we're not religious people. That's not why we go there. But they are like extremely historical locations that you wouldn't normally get a chance to stay in. And
a lot of them serve food. They have some good restaurants in them. And the decor is very, last century.
Yeah. Centuries.
Whatever. Yeah. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a good place to stay.
And in this one, they're also famous for their boys choir. So you get a chance to hear the boys choir, which is
whether they're practicing or they're at mass.
Exactly. Which is just the magical thing.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, one of the things about the Serra de Tramuntana is they have one of the scariest roads in the world, and that called to us. So
we love a road trip.
We love roading.
And the scarier and windier and more scenic it is, the better.
Yeah.
So this one is a good one. And what we didn't know was that this is also the time of year in spring when bicycle clubs from all around Europe descend on Mallorca to train and build up their winter muscles and get ready for the new season on the roads of the Serra de Tramuntana.
Yeah, so we ran into lots of bike groups all over the island, actually.
All over the island, but on those windy, steep roads up and down through the mountains, that's where you don't really want to run into them, literally.
It's called Se Colobra.
That was that seaside town that we drove down to. That was the scariest road going through there. And you go up around hairpin turns and through little tunnels and gaps in the road and gorges, up, and then down, all the way back down to sea level at this little village. And this is where most of the bikers were. And so you'd get stuck behind somebody because you couldn't pass. It's a very narrow road. You get stuck behind some bikes as they're going en masse up the hill. And then as you were going down the hill, these crazy people would be shooting past us on their bikes. Like, hey guys, I wasn't passing you when you were going slow up the mountain. You don't need to pass me going down the mountain. But it was basically no brakes, as fast as they could. I'm surprised we never saw any bicycle wrecks. But that was quite the experience. And just the whole area, super beautiful. We found some secluded beaches that were literally nobody but us on the beach.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Little beautiful coves, gorgeous, just gorgeous. Some lighthouses. They're always scenic. Everybody loves a lighthouse.
And then the other place we went is a little bit more touristy. It's called Soler or Sorier. And it's just a little town over on the north side of the island. And it has a little train. So we rode on the train. And It's just cute. It's got a good market. It's good for shopping. It's got good restaurants. It was a fun day out. It was something to do after we had done a little bit of exploring.
Yeah.
And it wasn't far from where we were staying either. That was one of the reasons we stayed there. It was kind of in between those two things that we wanted to do while we were on Mallorca.
Well, the next thing we did was Ibiza. And like I said, we just spent the day there. We took the ferry in. It leaves early in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. You get into Ibiza around 11 o'clock in the morning. And then it leaves again at 9 o'clock at night. So you have all that time to explore the city. And that was enough. Probably could have spent a day or two there. We didn't get a chance to explore anything outside of Ibiza, the city itself. But we had a great day.
It was a beautiful day. To me, it was a little bit surprising because I was kind of like anti-Ibiza before I went there. I mean, I knew there were going to be partiers. And as you're walking down the downtown area, it has that whole old hippie feel where it's got the smells and the odors, and it's got incense, and it's got lots of Nepalese flags, and it's got, it's got that whole hippie vibe, which I don't mind, but it's not really my thing.
Tie-dye and macrame.
And those people are there basically because they want to get brown on the sand and party all night. That's their whole reason for being. And that's just not my scene. So I was kind of anti-Ibiza before I went. But then we did what I think was one of the best things you could ever do there. And we climbed up to the Citadel. Yeah. Which was a hike.
The Citadel and the old town inside the Citadel area just kind of climbs up the mountain above the city all the way up to its peak, overlooking the harbor and the rest of the city. It's a great defensive position, I think. But more than that, nowadays, it's just a beautiful place to go up, exploring the little alleyways that wind their way up the mountain. It's almost like a village inside the Citadel. So that's really cool. And that's where a lot of the, I think, local older people still live. So it doesn't feel like a party town when you're in there. It just feels like an old Spanish village.
Which is well worth going to.
So cool.
And in fact, looking over the side of the Citadel, the views basically of a bay or a cove, and has the most turquoise waters with a couple of little islands, and the boats are out there. I mean, it was stunning. And I think it's been stunning for hundreds of years because one famous man, you may have heard of him, Nostradamus.
Yeah.
He says, as you know, he predicted the end of the world. And he said, when the end of the world comes, I should like to be on Ibiza.
Wow.
And I think he was probably looking at that view because that view is spectacular.
Now it really makes me want to go back and explore more of the island, see what else we missed. However, we did, even though it is a big party area and a lot of people are going there for resort vacations and that sort of thing. And yeah, the downtown, down at the base of the city around the Citadel, I mean, it feels very touristy. But we did find a little mom and pop fish restaurant tucked away down a side alley that had the most amazing lunch.
And it was so small. It was one of those places that, I kind of seek these places out, but you look in it and it's really a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tiled all the way around. It had like a light tile that was kind of browned from the amount of grease and the ages and whatever.
That a patina.
Oh yeah, a patina. That's what it was. And it was packed. And we found ourselves a table, and I gotta say that was one of the best meals I think we had in all three islands because the fish was so fresh. The ladies running the kitchen were so knowledgeable. Or maybe that was not the lady kitchen, but anyway.
The house wine was delicious.
Always.
Yeah, it was just the best place. And to just stumble in it amongst all the other tourist things, we were happy. It was great.
It makes our day when we don't fall prey to the gauntlet.
It's kind of like it's definitely an area where, as you're walking through the restaurant streets, there are touts out front, and they've got their menus, their multi-language menus, and that they are pretty good at judging where you're from and what language you speak just by seeing you coming down the street. So they've got that menu open to Russian or French or German or Chinese or Japanese or whatever they think you speak. And it's in your face as you go by. Come eat, free drinks today, whatever. Those are the places I avoid.
Me too.
Like the plague.
That's why we're married. We both despise the same type of thing.
Well, the other thing we had there that I really enjoyed was the ensaimada.
Which we had a goal of having that. We knew that was a big thing. So it's basically a flaky, sugary pastry.
Yeah, filled with cream. And how can you go wrong?
I mean, we weren't going to be leaving that island without having at least one. And I think we did it.
Maybe two.
We did our fair share.
Back in the day when I could still eat 3 or 4.
Yeah, right. Back in the day when we could.
Now we have to share one.
That's right. Oh, how times have changed.
But we did. We got right back on the ferry about 9:00. We had found the same little corner near the cafe on board with bench seats, and we all just kind of laid out.
And the windows, I remember the windows being about 1.5 feet deep.
Yeah.
And that's where the toddler slept, and they were as
we
comfy as
out.
They were so cute. We were all passed out because, we'd been in the sun and the elements all day, and it was a sunny, beautiful, beautiful day. But, after hiking basically up a mountain in the Citadel and then down again, we were all sleepy. So we slept back to the mainland.
And
the main island.
Head back to our
and we went back to our rooms and went to bed.
Recovered, as we say, from the long day.
We'll have to give Ibiza another chance, and maybe while we're there, go further inland and not stay in the main city.
Well,
which was beautiful, but still.
Well, I loved what we did, so I definitely will go back.
Our final island that we visited was Menorca, which is Little Island.
That's what it means, Little Island.
Yeah. Mallorca is like Big Island and Menorca is like Little Island.
That makes sense.
And Ibiza is like Ibiza.
It's like,
you're going to eat pizza. Bum, 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 bum.
Well, when you look at the island on a map, it's the shape of a slice of pizza.
It is not.
It's not. Just joking. So the ferry from El Sudia, you have to drive to the north of Mallorca to get on the ferry. And then it is a pretty short crossing over to Menorca, to the Ciutadella de Menorca. It takes about 2 hours. And there are a few sailings each day. You can take the bus up to the ferry.
Yeah. Cross
over as a foot passenger, and then bus around Menorca, get down to Port Mahon, which is the main city. But you certainly do want to spend some time in Ciutadella, because it is a beautiful city with an old, like a antique or ancient port area. Just gorgeous. Of course, anytime you go to an old Spanish city, there's going to be an ancient cathedral that you should spend some time in, if nothing else, to beat the heat.
Yeah. They're the coolest places in the city usually.
Quite physically coolest.
That's what I meant.
And then down to Mahon. And like I said, for me, when I read about Mahon in these novels that I just love, and they talk about...
we can put a link to the novels. People might be interested in reading it.
Everybody should read it.
What is I tried reading them, and the language for some reason just didn't really resonate with me. But the stories he tells me sound wonderful.
Well, it's late 18th century, 19th century British Navy. And the one guy is the captain of the ship, and the other guy is his friend, who's a doctor and also a spy. So between the two of them, there's always some like classic adventure going on, and sometimes involving both of them.
And Jim's read this entire series, 20-book series,
5 times,
at least,
6 times.
Ridiculous amount of times.
It spurred me on to do tall ship training sailings. Anytime I can do that, anytime I can get on board a tall ship, I am there. Anytime I can get into an old British fort or European
or any kind of fort,
anything like that, I'm there. And that's what Port Mahon was. Mahon was a base of operations, one of the bases of operations for the British Navy. And so it was fortified, and, it's got the governor's mansion and just the narrow winding streets that go up from the port. And then through the town, there's taverns and tapas bars. And
it's a beautiful town.
It really is.
The old houses, the balustrades, and the just the gardens. And I mean, it was just a gorgeous, gorgeous place.
And of course, it's got the old Spanish influence. So it still has the cathedrals and the towers and all that. And in fact, down by the port, one of the coolest things that I think is like, I've been anywhere, is an old Carmelite monastery that has been turned into like a shopping,
like a market, like one of those new market areas,
destination where they've kept the building, renovated everything. It's still a great historical destination in and of itself. But then you throw in a very cool market, and
lots of chances
maybe live music and outside cafes,
things to eat. For example, did you know? Here's another trivia. Did you know that Mahon is the originator, that town, of mayonnaise?
Really?
Yes.
That's cool.
And even though, of course, the French say they invented it and it came from like a remoulade, really, it's been proven over and over again that it was more of a Spanish thing coming from Mahon because of the olive oil. And that's where the olive oil is made. So everybody, all those sandwiches, now you have to go to Mahon, right? I mean, who doesn't want to go to the place where mayonnaise was invented? Well, in 1806.
That makes sense. And it's also just another one of those, ocean going crossroads where it has been influenced by different peoples throughout history. And you can taste that in the food and you see it in the architecture. And I just love that kind of thing. I guess.
And the people, I felt like, I mean, the whole time we were there, the people were friendly, but I don't know. It just seemed like they went an extra mile when we were in Menorca. We stayed in a little catering B&B, self-catering B&B. But the woman was so nice. I mean, there was a welcome gift and she came to check with us. Do we need directions?
That's right. I said it was a hotel, but it wasn't. It was an Airbnb. And it just felt like
in Menorca.
Yeah. It just felt like it was so well serviced that, that's right. It was an Airbnb. Mm-hmm. I loved it. That was a great place.
It was, and it was just kind of like this hole in the wall little, I mean, I keep saying hole in the wall, but it was tiny.
But it was one of the old like mansions that had been divided into a couple of different things and renovated and beautifully, beautifully renovated. Just a gorgeous place to stay. I loved it.
I really enjoyed everything about Menorca. Now, so basically the big fortress there that you go to is called La Mola. Mm-hmm. And it was a 19th century defensive fort in the mouth of the harbor. And, basically, I mean, you can walk in. I think it was pretty sprawling. I think we spent a good hour and a half to 2 hours there.
Two, definitely.
We had a great time.
It was a beautiful day and it's right on the promontory at the end of the harbor, looking out at the Med. So you can walk around inside the fort and check out all the historical stuff inside the fort. But then you can also walk around outside the fort. There's a little beach. You can look out over the cliffs out into the Med. You can look back the harbor towards the city. And it's just a beautiful place to go and spend the day. Bring some food, have a little picnic or eat on site. It's a great, great area.
Yeah. One thing we didn't mention, and this is pretty much on all of the islands. We definitely went to some on Mallorca and on Menorca, were some of the Neolithic temples. Because we love an old temple. And we went to a couple of different ones. Palencia on Mallorca. And they're very cool. They have a lot of standing stone still and some archways. Some of the things were much more intact than you would actually expect. So I didn't want to forget mentioning that because I really enjoy those old
we love those
ruins.
Old, really old sites where
you give me a pile of rocks any day.
Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of left to your own imagination on what it was built for, what it was used for, who did it and why. I just love that, having to think of that for yourself.
So we didn't talk as much about the food on this one. Like I said, you've got to try the mayonnaise. It's really good. There's fresh food. Get an ensaimada, which is a flaky pastry. They also have, I think they're called ensignoles, which is a donut. We tried those too. Who doesn't love fried dough? Come on, please.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have all the regular tapas, but everything from tapas to fish and chips because of
the influence.
So the food there was spectacular. I don't remember having a bad meal. It was just so good.
Yeah, it was all incredible.
But at any rate, whether you want to go for the flashy sun and bathe and party all night, or whether you want to go and do it like we did, do more of a cultural tour, the Balearic Islands are really, really worth your time. They're cheap to get there. They're actually just a cheap destination in general. It's not as expensive as a lot of other places. So, hey, just go.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.